RealAgriculture.com's coverage of Crop Week 2011 in Saskatoon is brought to you by FarmLink Marketing Solutions, BioVision Seed Labs, the Canadian Wheat Board, and Highstick NT. We're here today on RealAgriculture.com with Drew Lerner from World Weather Incorporated.
Right.
We're going to talk about, obviously, the weather. Drew, weather is always on the mind of farmers. It's a constant occupation. What can we expect in 2011 in Western Canada for weather?
Well, it's going to start off a little threatening, I suppose, because of the snow cover that we're going to have. Quite a bit of the prairie is going to have quite a significant amount of snow on the ground, which is very typical of La Nina events, which is what's controlling our weather here this winter. So we're probably going to end up with quite a bit of snow that we're going to have to melt. This La Nina has been a fairly strong one, and that's likely to keep our snow around for a little longer than usual because of the fact that there's a lot of cold air that it's going to be forcing down from the Arctic. There's actually a couple of things that are playing out here. La Nina is the one, and it promotes a cooler bias on its own, along with the above average precipitation during the winter for snowfall. But we also have a little cooling going on in the atmosphere right now, and that's going to continue as we move forward through 2011. So the two are going to kind of work together. We're going to end up with a little bit of a cooler bias in the initial weeks of spring, and that's going to create a little bit of a slowdown in melting the snow, and may keep the snow depths around here, pretty significantly for a little while longer.
That would be a real concern for eastern Saskatchewan. That it was very wet last year. It froze wet. They've had a lot of snow, but you're telling me it's not looking very good for an early seeding for sure.
No, I don't think we're going to be able to do that, especially in that area you're describing. They really do have a tremendous amount of moisture abundance in the soil, and even if we manage to keep the ground from freezing up solid over the winter, I don't think enough percolation is going to take place to take the place of the new snow that's going to be melting. So I don't think we're going to see much change. We're still going to have standing water around for a while. What we're hoping for is that when we do finally start to melt the snow, we'll be late enough in the season that our normal temperatures would be higher. So we may have a quicker meltdown, if you will. That may create some flooding right off the bat, but it'll get it out of the way, and maybe we can get out there and work some of these fields before the summer rainy season kicks in.
Yeah, well, you look at last summer, Ontario had a great summer.
Yeah.
Western Canada, we weren't really sure when summer began, and then all we knew, all of a sudden, we finished harvest, and then it was winter. So it was definitely, I feel like a pretty short summer. What can we expect in terms of temperatures for this summer?
Well, I think we'll do a little bit better on temperatures this summer than we did last. We'll have a little more warmth, but we're still going to have the wet weather bias. So putting the two together, it will get a little bit better, a little faster going, but we're also going to have the moisture around, so we're still going to have the issues with getting out and spraying. We're still going to have the issues with getting access to some of the fields in the wetter locations, and the crop development will still be a little bit behind normal, mainly because we're going to get a slow start. So there'll be a little more heat, I think. There should be a ridge of high pressure that's going to build up down in the U.S., and it's not expected to be a real strong ridge, just enough to push the jet stream over the prairie so that we can end up with frequent storm systems coming across.
So what's happening here? Last summer was very wet as well. You're talking about, and we've also we're in Saskatoon here. There's lots of snow here. There's lots of snow in Alberta, and now you're saying a wet summer as well. Is there a reason for all the moisture all of a sudden?
Well, we're in a pattern right now that is repeating that of the 1950s. And we had some very wet years that occurred then, especially in the eastern half of the prairie, just like we're seeing now. And these patterns will repeat themselves. They do that. The longer we live, the more we see these patterns repeat themselves. So I think that this will continue to play out over time. There's also some other things going on. I think there's a little bit of global cooling taking place right now. So
Global cooling?
Oh, no.
Come on, what's that about? I've never heard of that.
Well, the sun has actually been cooling off since about the early 1980s, actually.
Right.
And there's a lag time between when the sun reaches a maximum or minimum of heat output and when the Earth responds. And we don't know exactly why, but if you look at the data, you can see that there's a lag. And the Earth should have reached its peak of warmth around 2005, 2007, just like the sun reached its peak some 25 years before that. And so the sun's been cooling ever since, and we should be doing the same as we move forward. Now, before you get way ahead of me, that doesn't mean ice age. It doesn't mean we're going to have all cold summers and all that. But we are not going to continue this skyrocketing warmth that we've been seeing in the past. And I've got quite a bit of evidence that I can present to show that. But we're all a bunch of meteorologists who don't really know what we're talking about, and the one thing that I refuse to do is to get up on a soapbox and tell everybody this is the way it's going to be, because I'm not God and I have no clue what is really going on. But I do see patterns that are repeating, and I think that if we want to look at the big picture and make sure we fully understand what's going on in the atmosphere, we have to look at everything, including the sun.
Yeah. Well, I've had different meteorologists say before that it's you can predict temperature much more accurately than you can predict precipitation.
Interesting.
Would you agree with that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's all challenging to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. It depends on what time frame you're talking about. Weather cycles and weather trends. If you're looking at long-term patterns, I think you can do some of that sometimes. It just depends on what patterns are playing out.
How easy is it to predict wind? Wind is something, I'm from southern Alberta, so we have a lot of wind. We have no shortage of it in winter and summer. So can you predict wind? Like, areas like eastern Saskatchewan that are so wet, can you predict that there's going to be wind in that area to dry some of this land up?
I think you can do some general things. And I think, you can't sit down and say, well, on the 25th of May, it's going to blow 40 miles an hour or whatever. But you can do some general things. If you know that you're going to have some very strong cold surges that are in a generally warm pattern, then you're going to get a lot of wind, because that creates really deep low pressure systems while you have high pressure systems around. And it's really the pressure gradient that causes the wind. So if you can find a pattern that shows that you're going to have bigger contrast in temperature somewhere across the prairie or even across Canada in general, you can probably come to a conclusion that it's going to be windy in some particular location, wherever those features are going to be located.
So across Western Canada, we can expect a late spring is basically what we're looking up against.
I think that's probably true. Maybe not for everybody. But I think that, you mentioned Alberta's got a lot of snow, and it's not done yet. We've got 2 or 3 more storms of size coming up here in just the next few weeks.
Like we just had?
Yeah.
Oh, good. So, yeah, that's good.
So in Alberta, there's been quite a bit of dryness, actually, still hanging on last year. It wasn't nearly as wet in Alberta and in some parts of Alberta as it was, further to the east.
Yeah, the Peace River region was definitely a lot drier.
Yeah, and Peace River region still has very little snow on the ground, and it still needs that to be fixed. And I don't think it's going to happen. That's one area that it will probably still have dryness through a big part of the growing season. They will start getting better rains in the second half of the summer. And they should end up with a much better moisture profile, but it'll be a little late.
Yeah.
So they'll be struggling for moisture up there.
So to wrap up here, late spring, wet summer, but hot, but warm. It's going to be good hot temperatures.
Well, I don't know about it.
Okay,
I don't know if I want to
warmer,
say hot. Yeah,
warmer,
warmer than last year.
Which isn't saying very much.
No.
But what about? Have you looked forward to the fall, late fall, or are we talking early fall again?
On the fall, the early part of fall, late August, September, the early start of the harvest period, I think we're still going to be dealing with wet weather, and we'll still have the warmer bias. Now, again, I want to make sure that we got this clear on the warmth. Yeah. It's not going to be a hot summer by any means, but it will have some warmer conditions. But what's going to happen is that we're going to get some warmth just long enough to bring that moisture out of the soil, cause more thunderstorms, and it's going to rain, so it cools off, but you get more moisture. So it's not going to be a great thing.
Sell your truck and buy a boat is
there you go.
I'm hearing.
No, I hope it's not quite that bad.
Drew, thanks a lot, and we'll hopefully talk to you again sometime in the future.
Yeah, great. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it.